Stu Neiman.
Juan, good to see you again.
Ongi etorri. Bienvenido. Welcome back to Chick Chack, which is my podcast.
It's wonderful to be here, especially in person.
I'd like to tell you something.
Please.
Right now, I feel like a dream come true because I will never imagine that I was in Magic City's court doing a podcast.
Well, you asked when we discussed doing a podcast, when we discussed sitting down again, because we have spoken a few times.
I don't want to know how I feel when I go back next week and I do starting the same thing, but in my rooms using Google Meet and the difficulties of it, and I feel also very commodore. Stu,
yes.
I feel like David Letterman without the beer and without his sense of humor. So you put the humor in this talk.
Sometimes I'm known for my humor. Not everybody gets it. Not everybody likes it. Not everybody is on the positive receiving end of it.
It's kind of sarcastic sometimes.
Oh, I'm not a sarcastic person by nature, but I do find humor in sarcasm. And with humor, I remember someone saying can be very brittle. I'm not a comedian. You know, I somehow or other in life, I wound up talking about jai-alai. I didn't expect that, as we've discussed before. And I don't want to keep saying as we've discussed before, because we'll just establish right now that we've sat down and we've chatted for the blog, when you're doing the blog, the Chick Check blog.
Right.
That was called Chick Check, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
Zuleika's Chick Check.
Zuleika's Chick Check,
whatever.
the blogs. So that was written. And then we have done at least one FaceTime where I needed information from you to write a blog for the WJAL website. And I was dealing with the most complicated subject in jai-alai.
Yeah.
And I wanted your opinion on how to deal with it sensitively. And you were very kind, and that was a 2.5-hour conversation. But your input was invaluable. And then you broke into podcasts, and I catch some of them, especially since you told me that I can turn on subtitles with YouTube. So since you've shared that with me, what you've been doing is fantastic, and the people who you've spoken to, and I will say all the people you've spoken to.
Thank you so much.
I've either enjoyed it or understood it. I think it's great.
Our followers, especially the Basque country, introduce yourself again. See, a lot of them know you, but Stu Neiman is the director of operation, which will be the equivalent, if there is one, in the traditional jai-alai. See, the one that we were familiar with.
So. Let me give my background, just very quick, my jai-alai credentials. So the story, for those who don't know, is that I was born and raised in Miami, and as were my parents. And my father started playing amateur jai-alai in 1963, and this actually predates the amateur programs that were in Miami at that time. I was born in 1969, and so I have been around jai-alai literally since as long as I can remember. My first conscious memories of being around jai-alai was at Orbea's amateur, the four courts there, and I have good memory of Don Fernando, may he rest in peace, with the cigar, with the chair. Those stories I remember. I do remember a chair. I remember Piston, the first, on a Sunday. I remember young JJ before he turned Hota, before he turned professional. And this is when I was 5 or 6 years old, running around on the outside of the court with Fernandito and Ralph Anchia.
Did you met Epifanio?
I met Epi. We picked up balls from Epi. My father and I picked up jai-alai balls at Epi's house. And that's the only time. I would have been 6 or 7. But I wasn't old enough to have an interaction with him that I remember.
He must have been a tremendous teacher. His knowledge of jai-alai was unbelievable. My brother, Zuleika, the one that played in Miami Jai-Alai, Hartford, and Milford, and Dania, and other places, he's always like them. I didn't profit. I didn't use my time talking with Epifanio because I have the feeling that he knew so much. As a matter of fact, he was Joy's teacher,
Yes.
among others, no?
He was the first. When Miami Jai-Alai first created a Jai-Alai school, he was the first teacher. At North Miami Amateur, it was just what people will remember: the middle court and the rubber ball court. The hardball court, which now is still there but is used for acrobatics or something like that, that was built specifically by the owners of North Miami Amateur Jai-Alai. And that's the court where Joey learned his craft. Joey being the first American student of Epi. So I was a child while that was going on. I didn't get into the Miami Jai-Alai school. I didn't start playing myself until, sorry, when I say playing, I use that term very loosely, until I was 13 when I first went into the Miami Jai-Alai school.
We may touch that subject
We can.
about the Jai-Alai program because I think it's very interesting, especially for the future. So last time we talked was 3 years ago.
Wow.
And that's a lot of time, or how you see that frame of time?
As we get older, and I think most people can agree with this, is that, and I've talked with some of the players about this, especially some of the players who started with us in 2018, is that, you know, when you're a kid, from birth to 10 seems like it takes forever. Yeah. From 10, when you think of what you were at 10 years old and then 20 years old, that also takes a very long time, and you're so many changes. 20 to 30 is another where you're figuring things out. By 30, hopefully you've figured things out and you're doing something that, whatever it is, which I find interesting because in Jai-Alai at one time, you know, 30 was, you were peaking around 30 and then approaching 40.
Over the hill.
Exactly. After 30, it was, you know, is he going to make it to 40? Which of course has changed over the years. You just spoke with Felix.
When I arrived to Florida for first time, 1974, I was 17, and I wanted so much to become 18 or 21, I think, because you can go to the bar at that age. So I have difficulties getting into the bar after Jai-Alai. So,
which was always an important part of it. I do want to finish. I do want to finish so. I started at the North Miami Jai-Alai School when I was 13. That also then I would work behind the counter for Howie, sewing Jai-Alai balls and working the counter, which is checking people in and out. But playing in the school, I knew that I would not play professional Jai-Alai. This was, of course, before 1988. And I know that in 1988, yes, I probably could have gone somewhere, you know, and been on a roster, but that wouldn't have been good for Jai-Alai, and it certainly wouldn't have been good for me. So I followed an educational path, but wound up leaving the educational path and medicine in 1991 and came back to amateur Jai-Alai in 91 for the first time, in June of 91, for the first time in 10 years, they needed a new announcer at Miami Jai-Alai, and I tried out. That time you had to try out. Blue sport coat and a tie, and you went and you tried out. I got the position, so I was an announcer until 1997. Then 1997, I became assistant general manager at Miami, and then was assistant general manager Miami, Tampa, Fort Pierce, and Ocala, 1997 through 2013. And so director of Jai-Alai operations now, in answering your question, is I take care of, focus on things along with the player manager, Juan Ramon, our players, cestas, balls, contracts. Also, I've been responsible for a few years, and I've been very grateful to Scott, player acquisition, as far as inviting some players to the roster, explaining to other players why they can't come to the roster, which I believe I heard an interview with someone who was not pleased with that. But, you know, we all understand.
A lot of dirty work. Right?
There is. When you're dealing with people, it's going to be. And, but all those years, the 30 years working around traditional highlight, I think if nothing else prepared me for this, because what we do at Magic City has always been so different. And that's the way it was envisioned from the beginning. And conveying that to the highlight community is a very difficult, especially when you don't speak Basque or Spanish. Yeah. It's a pretty hard thing to say, no, he doesn't care if he doesn't catch. No, in terms of Scott, no, he's looking for something different. So it used to be assistant general manager as far as the operation of a fronton, which covers food and beverage, players, parking, all those other things. Now all I focus on is the highlight portion of it. And it's a good thing to be doing at 56.
Okay. Stu, looking back, what has changed in you and in highlight since then, in 3 years?
In the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Highlight first. I'm happy, beyond happy, that highlight is having the resurgence of interest in the Basque Country.
Do you feel that?
Yes, 100%.
Based on what?
Based on the video that I see coming out of Guernica, based on the conversations that I have with you, based on the conversations that I have with Goico, based on the conversations that I have with anyone from over there, and that the people who are watching are not from a highlight background. You had an interview with Unda. With Unda.
Unda, right.
Unda, who's with us now.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating that Unda does not come from a traditional highlight background. So the people who are watching highlight, the people in the Basque Country, the people who are buying those tickets, the people who are going, have a genuine interest in the players and in the program. And the presentation that EITB has been doing has been excellent.
So, Stu, you have the feeling that Magic City World Highlight is being homologated, so to say, in the world of highlight? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, look, when we started in 2018, the idea was that how highlight had been played and how highlight had been presented in the United States had run its course. From a financial standpoint, that had been the case for much longer than 2018. And so Scott's vision, and it's not that I'm employed by Scott, so I have to say nice things. Because I'll tell you, some of the things he's come up with, I think, are crazy. Some of the things he and I have had very deep discussions about those things that we don't agree on. I'll keep between us, but it's a very short list. There's no question that both for the Basque Country, and which I do not claim to be an expert, but of my experience with the sport, but definitely here in the United States, highlight needed something, not just something fresh, because we did many things that were fresh. One of the not arguments, but one of the complaints that we would frequently hear: more marketing, more marketing, more marketing. I remember at Fort Pierce in '97, Fort Pierce had a $100,000 radio budget, just for radio, for a 5-month season or something like that. So it wasn't just a question of marketing. People stopped coming to the frontons. So it needed something radical. And Magic City, as you know, was radical. And it was like a bomb that went off in the highlight community. And the fact that I was asked to be part of it was very surprising to me. I didn't fully understand it. I didn't understand training highlight players with no experience, and in 6 months they're going to play professional highlight. So that's ridiculous. It's not going to work. They said, well, it better work because we're starting July 1st. And now we've seen basically how that, what's happened is that, yes, the public wasn't going to watch players play amateur for years, and that better players needed to come in, but also the players who were here and learning how to get better. So still roughly about a third of the roster now are the original Magic City highlight players, a little less than a third now. Last year it was solidly a third.
Do you get many calls from the Basque Country players that want to play with you?
More so now, I would say, more so now than before. And I understand that part of that is financial. You know, the way we do it here and the way that it's done there has always been different. Here, though, it's still, what's different about this model is that every player has the same income, has the same salary. So when you played,
no differences.
No difference. No. Every player has the base salary, and then all of the money is in the prize money. Was that a signal to me or no?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And that's something that Scott has wanted to see for a long time. But by the same token, when we were doing parimutuel, wins are $125 for the later games. Place is $75. Show is 50. And now with Battle Court, if your team wins, that is $450. And then if you win your game, that's at least $200 to $225 if you're in Division I. So a good amount of money is in the prize money, as opposed to how it's done elsewhere, which is an appearance fee or just a contracted amount. And that's very much the vision of Scott.
That's a good attraction for overseas players.
It definitely is.
It helps.
It definitely helps.
Looking back again, how would you sum up these years? Is it possible, these 3 years, or we need more time?
As far as a business, see, with Highlight, this is always the discussion. It's the business versus the sport.
Yeah.
What's happened with the sport is beautiful, I think. Yes, even with the glass. And is the glass hard for me to get used to? Yes, I spent my entire life around concrete and granite and pelotas with 103 grams.
We'll talk about that because tomorrow, Friday, is the last partido, the final.
Which is why we're on the court.
Right. And then you're moving to the historical Miami Biscayne.
Yes.
In its time, Miami Jai-Alai. We'll talk about that. So what has been the biggest surprises or lessons learned in this, since we talked for the last time? What surprised you? Anything?
Yes.
As far as players or response?
I would say that the highlight community can be very tricky.
Why?
We eat our own. And I'm calling myself part of the highlight community. I've seen highlight players for years make either terrible decisions or be very stubborn about things where other players were concerned. But this isn't just, I'm not just talking about Basque players or French players. I'm not just talking about Americans. I remember as a kid, the A group and the B group or a C group. You even still have amateurs who talk about he's a C player. He's a this. I saw you dropped 3 balls like yesterday. You caught 2 balls in a row, but he's a C player because you can throw hard from the right side. And players who in the United States who would be hitting us up at Fort Pierce or Ocala that I can beat this guy. I can beat that guy. It's like you really can't. It's much different when you get on the court. So one of the things that I have seen change is that highlight players who are stubborn, in many cases, as a group or as individuals, have been open to Magic City, have been open to the short court version. Well, I look in the audience, we saw Chimela sitting in the audience. We've seen, obviously, Felix. Felix has been on this court. You interviewed Felix the other day. I saw Felix before the Achilles. I saw him practice.
I was surprised how strong he threw it.
When he came out to this court, I was amazed. You have Felix, who's playing at Magic City. So is that a surprise? Yeah, that's a huge surprise. That's a gigantic surprise. So that part of it, the way that I would say that Magic City is complementary to the existing highlight framework that's been in place for a few hundred years, I'd say that has been a surprise. And then also the success that they've had in Guernica. I'm very happy to see, because we never understood in the United States. We watched partidos, or years ago in the 90s. I still have VHSs of some favorite partidos. But that's all we knew about the partidos. We didn't know what the audience composition was. We always thought that jai-alai was huge in the Basque Country. Always. Yeah. Every American, it's got to be huge over there. And didn't recognize that it was provincial. And that it was unique to the specific towns that it was played in, sometimes to the families that played it. And so now to see it on the bigger stand, so those things have been truly surprising. The acceptance of Magic City, the quality of play that I see here, that has also been a huge surprise.
A huge surprise.
Yeah.
And any lesson that you have learned?
Always.
Yes?
Always.
Are you the kind of people open to learn, or you're more than, you are not going to teach me how to run things?
No. I couldn't have survived with Scott had I been that way. I couldn't have survived in jai-alai had I been that way. I would say that up until about 10 years ago, so up until I was 48, just before I started in this program, I was, if someone said glass court, I would say, not going to work. Jai-alai hasn't made money in the United States in however many years. It can't possibly work. So a glass court's going to make a difference. I would have said that. In fact, I think I did say that at one point. I would have never called it not real jai-alai, which is what some people do, because that's one thing I recognize is that if you're throwing costados the right side, if the training is the same, you're using a cesta, the rules are the same, the lines are the same, it's jai-alai. Yeah. Whether it's 150 feet, 176 feet, it's ridiculously large like Mexico City or the big court in Havana. Courts have always been different size, and 36-meter jai-alai has been a recognized modality by the Federation for many years. Yeah. So it is jai-alai.
But at the same time, and I was to touch that subject later on, but I'm going to say it now. I have the feeling that this uniqueness of this court, which was surprising, a lot of discussion about it, it's real jai-alai, it's not, it's another modality, whatever, and not suddenly, but your project, your company, Scott, whatever, took the decision to move to the historical Miami Jai-Alai, which is concrete, back to the old days in a shorter format, 38 meters, if I'm not wrong.
You're right.
Isn't that kind of, come on, you're going back to the same stuff? I'm not saying that this is better than the one we are going to see over in Miami Jai-Alai, but it's kind of, this place has its charm, see? Yeah. It looks like you can take it anywhere. Las Vegas, Dubai, you talked about it last time. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there is still a possibility of moving, but what I'm trying to say is that, oh, come on, we're going back to the hybrid. No? Uh-huh. Hybrid is the word.
Hybrid, I guess, is
yeah, but more concrete. And the glass.
The way that I would...
Or this was because it was not definitely since the beginning.
So... when I came in 2018, I don't know that there was a plan to sell Magic City at some point. But the family who's owned it since the 1950s, who Scott, move the microphone away, they sold it. And they sold it 3 years ago. And we had a 3-year lease on the building. Had that continued, I imagine we would continue playing here. Mm. The new owners... have indicated they want to use this area for something else, as is their right. So the options are, you mentioned Vegas. I know that there have been discussions, and I know that there have been a few trips that have been made out there. There is interest there. It wasn't whatever was presented out there wasn't exactly the right fit. And also, the one conversation that I had with Scott was, I am someone who has moved jai-alai players in running amateur facilities. Sorry, there's another. Okay, we just cut that one off. In running other facilities, Ocala was seasonal, Fort Pierce was seasonal. So I have some experience with players moving back and forth. But also in 2010, moving the entire Miami Jai-Alai roster for 4 months out of the year to Fort Pierce. Miami at Fort Pierce, when we played up there, we brought them up on a bus, we put them in hotels. So I have experience moving a roster of 40 some players, and we discussed the logistics of making a move to Vegas, and it's a bit complex, and there's other costs that are associated with it. And no, not everybody's our players are not going to pick up and just move over there. So all those things put together made that, at this stage of our development, made Vegas not, I think, a reasonable option. So the next option was to potentially build a smaller fronton. The cost associated with that is huge in this particular economy in the United States, which I don't have to tell anybody is rapidly changing. So where would we go became a question, and it came down to, not surprisingly, 2 locations.
Okay.
Miami was a huge it's a huge surprise, and that's my nervous laugh, because just how it happened. I told you how it happened, and
happy coincidence.
It was an accident. It was a complete and total wonderful accident. The complete and total wonderful accident. You know, you can trim this if you want, but I'll tell you exactly what happened so that we have it on record, because I told you I'm concerned about revisionist history.
Stu, you're 40-something years old.
56.
56? Oh, I thought you were in your 40s.
I wish I was.
Okay. What keeps you motivated in a project many thought will be short-lived?
2 things I can speak to. For myself, I'm not concerned about legacy. I'm not concerned about anything that the program can bring to me. And I think that, okay, so some people are going to see this and go, it's false modesty. But no, people who really know me know that that is me, or is me now. My dedication is to the players, the original 2018 players, who have now invested 8 years of their time in becoming professional highlight players, as well as to the players from the traditional highlight world who committed to this program, and to Scott and the Havnick family, who have backed this financially. And that's where my commitment and motivation is. And I have, from my history in highlight, I do have certain skills that these groups still find beneficial. So that's my motivation.
When you wake up in the morning, are there days that you say, come on, this thing, I have a problem, a player called me, I had this nightmare, or is it easy going for you after so many decades?
Highlight players are a pain in the ass.
Well, I was going to ask you later on, but...
Highlight players are a pain in the ass. But it's okay.
But let me tell you something. Elizeg is not anymore in the roster. So.
Let me tell you something. I believe to have Don Adolfo right now, I think would be a pleasure. I think would be an absolute pleasure.
You have to invite him next year for Miami Herald. Here's maybe someone in the audience will say, come on, Elizeg.
Elizeg was such an amazing player, and just in truth, the story there is, we had so much, I personally, and Colette, may he rest in peace, had so much respect for he and the team of Goico and Elizeg was just beautiful to watch. And I was glad to see him in Goico's documentary. He was a fantastic player. Miami's not a good match for a lot of people. It wasn't just he who had a difficult time with the audience. There are other players who remain nameless who had a difficult time with the environment of Miami. It wasn't healthy for them, and for a variety of different reasons, partying or whatever it was.
Is he the most spectacular player that you have seen?
Elizeg?
Yeah. Or which one would you pick otherwise?
He's up there. As far as spectacular, you see, it's interesting because there's spectacular and there's consistent. You see, the best highlight players in Quinellas, in my opinion, are the consistent players. And that proves out in the numbers, and that proves out in the salaries, and that proves out in titles. You look at, of the 80s, we'll call it 80s and 90s, or Michelin at Miami Jai-Alai. You know, that 12th game, singles, I'll always talk about it because there were other guys who played there, and I've talked to JR about this. I said, it wasn't just the two, it wasn't just the two of you, and I know you've spoken with both of them. There were, you had Benny and you had Kent and you had and Ernesto Arriaga. So consistent highlight players who are strong are wonderful to watch. Then you have the explosive highlight players, which is a Lord way. In my lifetime, there were before. Chimelo, of course, predates my time, but a Lord way, Alizigi was fantastic. Exciting, Baronio. Barney on the court. People, that's a name that doesn't get, because some guys retire and become very quiet. But I remember seeing Baronio just being all over the court, and it was like, and then to see the camaraderie between Baronio and Joey. That was something very nice to see, even though I wasn't working at Dania at the time. And then if you ask me though, like who had the best career, Oratio. Oratio is not a name that's going to be brought up.
Oratio, West Palm Beach player?
West Palm Beach, Tampa, Miami. He played on 3 year-round rosters past 50. Okay. So theoretically, Oratio has more games played, more wins, places, and shows than any other player in the United States ever, because he played on 3 year-round rosters, even though he was out in 88 for a bit. But he played and always played at the top level. Always played at the top level until the end of his career. That's something you're not going to see. But Alizigi, as far as that explosive serve and he was extremely exciting to watch.
But, it was not included in my questionnaire, but now that we're talking about players, would you dare to complete a Hall of Fame of players, or what criteria do you think that it should be followed? And sooner or later, I think you guys will be forced to do something like that, because it helps the sport, the legacy. Well, what I don't know is how to do it. For instance, our friend Jesus Oliveira, which is a tremendous Jai-Alai fan, one of the biggest, nice guy, he completed something like that in his own way, because each one probably has his own Hall of Fame. Do you think that is possible, or is that in your mind as far as...
You see, I appreciate the question, because it's very difficult to ask. Like, I think of my dream, Andrew, who I announce with, and Scott are perfect for each other because they're into sports. I'm not. I'm into highlights. And it's a joke inside the community. This is the only sport that I know. I'm not interested in other sports.
Well, I have the other feeling. I thought that Andrew was the knowledge and you were the voice.
He's such a pleasure to announce with, and he's got such a bright attitude. They need him to counter my darkness, because I come with some of the old baggage of highlight and that they want to brush off. But I will say this, is that the guy from Connecticut, Gallo, who does the questions that he does, and he always wants the Mount Rushmore of highlight players, and I gave him my answer, but it's like, for me, is Gojko the best singles player of all time? I don't know, because, so what I can say, honestly, my opinion, is that if we take Gojko with his skills, all of his skills, and we put him up against Bolivar at his prime, and Assis at his prime, and Orbea at his prime, Orbea the first, and Chiruka, who won many, Chiruka, may he rest in peace, who won many. When you look at those old records at Miami Highlight, it was Chiruka, Orbea, Chiruka for the singles title. So when you put those singles players up against one another, maybe Gojko would have the best record, but he would have a higher degree of competition. And this isn't saying anything against Imanol or anyone who he's played against, Eggy. He's played against great guys. And also the balls were different, the cestas were different, the holding was different. There's so many different features to it that it's really hard to say. For me, it starts with Irdoza Minor, and then you kind of grow from there.
Let's talk about the evolution of Magic City.
Okay.
Back then, you told me this was a long-term investment.
Yes.
A bet on the future.
Yes.
Where does Magic City stand today?
As far as the investment is concerned?
Yeah.
This is a question, and I know you've spoken with Scott. This is a question for Scott. So I'm I'm not evading the question in so much as I don't talk about other people's money, but I can give you a general idea, which is that it is still mostly funded by Scott and the Havnick family. All these years in, there is a path that they can see, which has been explained to me, to breaking even in potential profitability within at least the next 2 years, I would say. And I think the next 2 years are kind of make or break.
2 years from now?
I believe that we'll know within the next 2 years. And again, the goal is breaking even. They would like it to be profitable. They would like it to be not profitable. The thing is that they've already made a good amount of money, and they're very, very generous in terms of philanthropy. They're extremely philanthropic. And Jai-Alai isn't a philanthropy. It is a business, but they believe in it, and they continue to back it, and they continue to push it, and they continue to grow. In the move to Miami, and I'm going to have a nervous laugh every time I say it because how it happened was just crazy. Even that commitment, because there's a huge financial commitment that goes to what's taking place there right now. And to Miami's credit, management and ownership has taken on a certain amount of that responsibility. We're not just over there doing things. Mr. Licciardi, an old friend and my old boss, has been doing incredible things over there.
So, therefore, the support of Scott Sevin and West Flagler Association continues.
Yes.
Right? It's secure, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How has the roster changed in these 3 years? More experienced, younger, more diverse, of course. How many players do you have right now? And the salaries, I don't know if you can talk about it, but
of course,
to have a general idea. But it's obvious that the roster has changed a lot. Yes, players from Dania, the south part of the Basque, and the French part.
So, let's talk. So currently we have, going into 2026, we'll have 40 players. And then it's, up until now, it's been how many players do you have for what we started calling pelota, which is the quinellas, versus how many do you have for battle court. So battle court is 6 teams of 6. So when you do that math, you know that in this upcoming draft that we're going to have in January, there are some players who are not going to be on a battle court team. Scott has come up with a plan to have an exhibition game with some of our oldest players who may not get picked up in the draft over at the new facility, as well as have them as substitutes. As far as the composition of play here, I have been very excited by the most important thing for me is the locker room. Period. I was going to say something and I cut. Is the locker room. That's the most important thing. That's the number one issue. Because you talk about the money, and the money is something that very frequently comes up. So, in discussion of money, the salary is the same for each player.
In the Basque Country, even we are living a revival, so to say, of Jai-Alai. No? Guernica is one example. Maybe just, I don't have the info, but maybe only Erquiaga, so to say, can live exclusively with Jai-Alai, not the rest. South Florida, it's a very expensive place.
Extremely expensive.
Extremely.
And Scott has said very publicly, he says he knows that you can't make it on $600 a week here, which is why there's money in prize money. And theoretically, and not even theoretically, based on the battle court schedule, that $600 goes to at least $850, even if you don't win anything in battle court, because you're playing battle court and the prize money that you get for a team loss, for instance.
And also, they have the possibility of having another job or going to college or whatever, no? Which is nice.
For most players, I would say it is necessary to have a second job with this, but by the same token, still top players are still topping out $75,000, $80,000 here. I think with the balance of quality of player the Douglas and Gaucheri who are coming in over 100, those days have gone by of players making more than 100, including tournament income.
As far as the level of play, it has increased, is much better. And the proof perhaps is that in order to qualify, they're very even until the end of the season, right?
Yes.
It's a matter of 1 point, half point, which is a good sign.
It's an excellent sign, because that's one thing on the management side is as long as we're creating something that is for the sport and for sports wagering, you want parity. You want someone to look at who's playing against each other and literally have them say, I really have no idea who's going to win that. You know, because this one can do this, and this one could do this, and it's the back quarter is better than the front quarter, and it's the opposite on the other team. That is something that has happened this year. So that's good for both the players, as far as more potential to earn prize money. That's good for the betting public, because it's more even. There aren't runaways. It's good for everyone.
Tomorrow the final is between the Cyclones and the Devils. Do you have any favorite, or is that parity that you're talking about?
I don't prognosticate. I never prognosticate, because one, it's Jai-Alai, and you know that element of luck is, because we're sitting right here on the court, right? And as we look, we can see the red line, and you could see the white mark.
Yeah.
And that's the difference in some cases between a $25,000 payout and a $7,500 payout.
Right.
That's is that line.
Last summer, it took place the World Supercore Championship, and 3 teams were representing the Basque Federation, or were 2 or 3?
I think 3. Yeah,
Three.
I believe it was 3.
You have a good relation with them? How is that as far as institutional relationship?
I wouldn't say institutionally. I deal with players individually. I know that the Basque Federation they actually sent one. It was Arbe and Salegi. So that team, for instance, they play a tournament over there, and the prize for that tournament is tickets to come over here, and so the airfare and hotel the federation covers for that.
But you, as far as responsible for this project, do you have talks with the president of the Basque Federation, or no?
No, I did this year because I think is it Oritz? Oritz is
Pardon me?
Who's president of the federation?
Michelena.
Okay. They reached out to Ara.
Okay.
And that's how it started. We have had over the years, the federation here, but I'm not. There are a couple different federations. I'm not sure which federation it was. And then I saw some of the political discussions that were going on amongst the federations. I was like, oh no, they're doing it again.
So this World Supercourt and Barrel of Courts are success. They're being consolidated.
We believe. I mean, they're a success in that people watch, and they seem to love it, and it's good for the players. So in that regard, yes. As far as whether or not they pay for themselves, I'm not sure.
Yeah. And as far as bet rivers, so these platforms, betting platforms, I understand that my series in the Hard Rock app.
Yes.
Did you notice an increase? It was a big benefit, or
what is different about the sports betting arena versus parimutuel? In parimutuel, as the house, I can go to the mutual's office, or I used to be able to sit in my office in Fort Pierce or Miami, and I could tell you what was being wagered literally between games. With the betting platforms, I don't have real-time access to those numbers, nor do I have access to what's being bet or how much has been bet. That's entirely, I call that we call it C-suite in the United States. That's Scott's department. But it's not like parimutuel wagering. So it's not like we know that we're holding. I remember in Fort Pierce holding a game. We need at least 2,000 bet on this game before the guy can serve, because our percentage of that
only on Fridays the fronton is open for the people, right?
Yes.
The access. How is the on-site attendance? My perception is that I don't know, the last 2 to 3 years that I came here for first time, it's pretty similar. It's not increasing. Do you have any objective information about that?
I don't have objective numbers. I would say that my perception is that this year is not a good year because it's been known now for a while that we're moving. So whereas for the last season and the season before that, you're going to put money into bringing people here. When you know you're moving for the last season, you'll hold off on that a little bit and then really make it work at the next place. Because right now we're going to be focused on this move is seismic in the Jai-Alai community, in my life, in the players. Where we're going is it's even I'm left speechless for a lot of it. But no, I would say that a regular attendance of between 300 and 500 people here would not be a problem if we were going to continue to stay, and that will be 500 plus will be the goal for the next place.
Why do you think is the reason that no more people come to attend for Fridays? Lack of knowledge. I mean, they don't know, or it's hard to get into the market.
This has been a question we've been asking ourselves in Miami, and I was responsible for that with the last company. Not exclusively responsible, but what do you do to get people into a Jai-Alai fronton, and why do they come to Jai-Alai frontons? Every Jai-Alai fronton that was built in the United States, why were they all sold out? Except maybe Big Ben, Ocala, where you played. In the beginning, yeah, but then, why did they stop coming? And realistically, the only sensible answer that any of us came to who looked at it was there were just more ways to spend the disposable dollar in the United States. And you had malls at one time where you just went to buy things. Then they were destinations, and then, cable TV. And there's so many other ways to spend your free time.
Stu, could it be that even though Jai-Alai has been for 100 years in Florida, but the remaining of it is very, very, very little. And in the Basque country, for instance, like I said before, we're kind of living this revival. The schools are full of kids, which means families around. The community is increasing amazingly. It could be one of the reasons that no more people come here because they don't have kids that could throw some balls. Families come around the kids. In other words, is there a gap because you don't have a Jai-Alai program? Not included that in the future you won't be so dependent of overseas players, because in the current times, the impression is that if you want to sign a new player, you have to go either Denia, which is to the Basque country, French, Spanish, or wherever you...
Yeah, Benny's been wonderful at recruiting.
And that's what I see.
Yeah.
Okay, this is fine. And where are the kids, the teenagers that see watching playing Goisherri, Zulaika, or Manu, or Douglas, and I want to play like that. It's a fantastic court. Even girls, we talk about that, see, because that's another phenomenon we're living in the Basque country. Girls are coming out of the stones.
They play great.
One of my friends, Mirapeix, which he was a former player, they had this weekend in Barcelona, and not hundreds, but 40, 50 girls they gathered in the Club Baskonia, organized this event, and the fronton was full, see, just with families. And I said, come on, that's the key.
Right.
And also, this 36 meters, I think is idoneous for girls. I can't wait to see them playing in such a court. Is in Scott or your mines, Arras, wherever, the possibility of...
Always.
Yes.
Girls playing Jai-Alai, yes, has been something that's been discussed for at least 6 years that I know of here. And as far as, training younger, yes, these are things that have been like, that's how the program started. We train guys with no experience. Now, of course, they were former athletes. So we did it. The issue is in having one court that you can do it on. This has been a question in Jai-Alai in the United States for at least the last 25 years. Because I was in the Miami Jai-Alai school in North Miami, and I went to the Miami Jai-Alai school because my father played amateur. The other kids that I played with in the school, every one of them, their parent was a Jai-Alai aficionado. And they would see in the program of whatever fronton, this was the same thing in Connecticut, that, a free training, free whatever, and they would take their kid because they liked Jai-Alai, and then the kid would either take to it or not. And so that's how kids really got into it, was their parents or their families had an interest in it. And there was an amateur facility to go to, whether it was Connecticut or whether it was here. And that was from the 70s through the 90s. So for that 20-year period. And we don't have that now. Benny Bueno has been the strongest, loudest voice about that. But accomplishing it has been more difficult. And the reason why is just very simply because you're constantly caught up in the business. You're constantly caught up in how to make this work. You'd like to have something outside where you can bring kids, and you'd like to be paying someone to have the kids out there, and you'd like to have cestas for them. It's not possible right now. No. And the focus has to be on the business. And that's the most direct answer I could give you, and that's been the case for years. It's a fantastic idea, and we've wanted to do it, but the time and attention has to be dedicated towards making this work.
It makes sense, because overseas in the Basque country, this job doesn't do the promoters, they do the schools.
Right.
Someone else is doing the job for them.
Right, 100%.
100%.
If we had municipal frontons,
right.
Yeah, if you had cities that built frontons, it would be complete.
Right.
And one person to teach who was volunteering or being paid something small, we wouldn't have the same issue. We'd have an issue with cestas, but...
Yeah. Jai-Alai has survived its own extinction more than once. Do you think it's breathing again or just hanging on?
Tough question. Okay. Jai-Alai needs money, and the money needs to come from somewhere. In the Basque country, there are several different sources, some of it government, that we do not have in the United States. So in the United States, it requires someone with money who is interested. And it's more than just an interest. Scott is fanatical about Jai-Alai. He's actually a much better spokesman for Jai-Alai than I am. And I like that. I really do like that. I believe in it. I believe in him. And I believe in the program and the players. Like you said, why do I wake up in the morning to? It's for them, because I've seen deciding. I know how hard Benny Collette and Dan Licciardi worked, and how hard I worked with Florida Gaming. And I know what happened at Tampa, and I know what happened at OK. I know why they were sold at the time, and I know what happened financially there. And it's not a happy story. And Scott is looking, this is one thing I think I told you when I asked for some advice, is that Scott is looking to write a happy ending for a story that has not had any happy endings in the United States. You've spoken with Berenson, you've spoken with Richie, you know what happened there. Florida Gaming, when you go back through it, and this is one thing when I was writing the blog for our website, I explained to Scott that, you don't like stories without happy ending. He's a realist and he's brilliant, but when I'm telling these stories, I can't put happy endings on them because I don't have to tell some of the horrors of it, but there are not a lot of happy endings, and that's kind of sad. So in answering your question, it requires money. And someone has to provide that money. And in the United States, in our system here, that requires at least break even or profit. And we're not there yet. So I'm not going to call it life support, because life support means that you're just keeping it going. We're investing. Scott's investing. He still sees it as an investment. I can't speak for the Argentinians at Dania. I don't know how they view it. If they see it as a loss leader or however they see it. It depends upon the attitude of the person providing the money, but until it is net profitable or net break even, it is on support, whether it's over there or whether it's here, because it requires money.
How do you feel, keeping in mind that in few months, in February 2026, you'll be moving to an old house that you know so well? What are your memories, your feelings? Everything for you started there, right? As an announcer?
Yes.
The smell of the place.
Oh, that's such a complicated question, because I answer honestly.
A lot of ghosts, nightmares.
I can tell you a funny story. Dave Lemon, another voice of Jai-Alai, the man who gave me my first job in Jai-Alai. I mean, Dan had to sign off on it, but Dave Lemon hired me as an announcer in '91. Dave Lemon was sitting in that chair over there. He was watching Battle Court, and I came out and I was talking next to him, sitting next to him after the games, talking to him, and Andrew came out. And Andrew, I believe, just saw two old announcers, like, just, oh, look at the history of that. And he just came out with a big smile. And, Andrew's heard some of the old stories, or, the good thing about the history of Jai-Alai is that when you really tell it honestly, as you've written about it, and as other people have written about it, there are as many good stories as there are not so good stories. In fact, there's more good stories. It's just how things kind of wound up. And what is that? That's based on money. That's not based on the sport. That's not based on the players. It's based on finances. That's all it's based on. So Andrew came out, and I asked him the next day what he thought of the conversation. And he went, "It got dark so quick." He said, all of a sudden, this one was dead, and that one was dead, and this wasn't working, and that wasn't working. I said, I felt I had to apologize to him. I was like, so it's a complex question for me. It's a very complex question for me. Let me bare my soul. Okay. It's the best option for this program at this time. It is the best partner to have. There's no question about it. And Dan Licciardi. Dan Licciardi was working with Scott, and Dan Licciardi brought me here. Then he went back. And I had worked with Dan for many years. So Dan, I know, is the best partner you could want. And he and Scott together are great because they're opposite sides. One speaks Greek, the other speaks Latin. Not literally, but it's like they do things differently, but together they make things happen. So in that regard, I am excited. As far as for me personally, I'm thankful to be part of it. I view Jai-Alai, for me personally, as kind of like an addiction. So it hasn't always been healthy for me. It hasn't always been healthy for others. And I made a life-altering decision at Miami Jai-Alai in the announcer's booth in 1991 that changed the entire course of my life. And I don't know that I would go back and change it. But I will say that, let me be honest with you. When it was first decided that that was the location we were going to, and Scott asked me to join he and Lindsay to walk through and get an idea and show them around, I had to arrive at Miami Jai-Alai at least 20 minutes before the meeting because I was crying. I was weeping when I pulled up to the building.
You was visiting again like the house of Usher, no?
For me, Miami Jai-Alai is the cathedral of Jai-Alai in the United States. They call it the Yankee Stadium. For me, there's something more there.
It's kind of miracle that it still stands.
100%.
After the coming of the rest of the frontons.
In the same building.
It's a miracle.
I've shown the players who have done work with us. We've been fixing things up over there ourselves. We've been, and of course, a lot of other people hired in to do it, but the work we can do for ourselves, we have it. And I point out the original structure from 1926. And I see how it's pitched, and then it's flat. That's where the first court was. This is the second court, built in 1963, open in 1965. And then I sent you a picture of the gray door. The gray door. You know what the gray door is? It's the door that goes from the locker room into the cage. And while you're living it, you don't know how special it is. But then you think about the players who have walked through every great player of the 20th century, not entirely the 20th century, because the first court was built in 63, so you have a number of great players before that, Guillermo Pistone, etc. But Orbea, Chiruca, Chamela, Bengoa, Joey, and who played tournaments there, Bolivar, yourself. You have every great player who played walk through that door right there that the Magic City players are going to be walking through.
What a pity that a lot of memorabilia was destroyed.
Oh, yeah. That was... So... Yeah, that was an abomination, but an abomination from a highlight perspective. I will say this about that part, is that when a business entity with no connection to highlight got a hold of a highlight fronton and highlight players, it was simultaneously the worst thing and best thing that could happen to highlight in the United States. Why is it the worst thing? It's the worst thing because the person who was there in charge said, why would I pay a player more than the absolute minimum and take this collective bargaining agreement and wipe your ass with it? I'm not paying. Go ahead and sue me. And no one had ever dealt with that before. And unfortunately for some of the players, they learned how bad it really could be. What do you deal with someone who really doesn't care? I mean, sincerely doesn't care, throws stuff away. Fortunately, most of that stuff turns out was saved. And it is in a school here in Miami.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. So most of it was saved, but he was, just get rid of it. So that is simultaneously horrible for highlight, but also good because highlight players at that point understood, most of them did anyway, how bad it could get. Something that I've been talking about for a long time when I would say there is no money, there's no money, and I'm just saying there's no money. There's no more, there's no money left. So that period of highlight was awful. I left. I was the first to be fired in that group, and I swore I was never coming back to highlight at that time. That was 2013, and to come back in 2018 is the genius of Licciardi, because I wouldn't have come back for anyone else. I didn't know Scott Savin. I didn't think this was going to work.
So you're keeping most of the cancha of the court, the main wall, left wall. Only the back wall is going to be glass?
Yes.
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 So far, how is the moving? I mean, is the court is set, or are you still working on it?
So I can tell you that right now, the back wall was designed and fabricated in Spain. It was shipped to the United States. The tariff was paid on it, and it is installed on the court at Miami. The back wall right now sits just in front of the 11 line, the service line at Miami. We will be taking the glass from here, as well as other things will be leaving here, of course, moving over there. That's a list that's still, in movement. And that will happen beginning on Monday. So that's why we're on the court.
And the length of the court is going to be 2 meters longer.
2 meters longer.
Yeah. Why?
JR asked for it.
Arrasate? Yeah.
JR asked for it. And that space makes it okay. Here the ceiling is low. I mean, you can't take the screen up anymore. You can see it. It's literally like 2 feet beneath the rafters. And so we could only be so high here. So this is too short. There's no question. But there's room. And by definition, I think based on one thing I've learned about a little bit is like the thermodynamics of the ball. And so now it's a little bit more like the engineering of, if you have a ceiling that's all the way up, you really do need to go a little bit further back. And that is going to fundamentally change the game that we play here.
So the length of the ceiling is going to be maintained as originally?
The entire front wall.
Okay.
The entire front wall. And then at the back, it angles down. So you can't just throw wall to wall high. The screen does come down for the last, I think, 5 or 10, maybe 10 feet to this height.
Okay, I see.
So from here, then up.
And how about the balls? Are you, did you already try?
Yes.
Which one is the right one?
We are we're in the process. We only have 4 glass panels in at the time. So, but they're the 1, 2, 3, 4, which is where most of the balls go. So we can experiment with balls. The most important thing is that it doesn't break the glass. So we can't have a traditional 103 gram, 104
How
gram.
do you know that? When you try it, you have to wait until you try it?
Yeah. Yeah, they're working with some experience from Florida City where they broke a number of glass panels with a softer ball. This ball that we came to, this is maybe the 10th or 11th ball that we used here. I mean, when we first came to this court, you could throw as hard as you wanted, and I don't care. You could have gotten Gueco out here. He couldn't hit the back wall. The ball died. That was the first ball and then eventually we got to a plastic ball with 2 layers of tape on it, electrical tape. With 2 layers of tape on it that has a perfect bounce for this court, which is very nuanced. So that ball will work. We know that will not break the glass, and that will work at Miami. That is a ball, I'm not going to say of last resort, but I would say that's not our first choice, but we know that we have something that won't break the glass, that is playable, that moves on that court.
It's going to be a rubber ball?
We would prefer a modified pelota. And that's what we're leaning towards.
What do you mean?
So, 103 gram ball with 2 layers of goat skin is not going to work for us. However, we've experimented, and this is, JR has for the most part asked peloteros locally overseas. We've gotten some balls. We have about 11 different balls. We have some plastic balls as well. And it seems to be about 55 grams to 60 grams maybe, with a lot of nylon and tape. And tape. Because I will say this, is goat skin adds a layer of expense and experience that we don't have right now. And then I was thinking about this last night. I was like thinking, now that I'm thinking about thermodynamics of the ball, which I don't understand thermodynamics, but I do understand the expansion of the ball. And we know that in traditional jai-alai, that the ball's on the court, it gets hot, it gets fast. Same thing with this plastic ball. So thermodynamics are involved in both. But how the inside swells against the 2 layers of goat skin versus tape, that's a little bit different. Yeah. I don't know what the calculation is on that, but I do know that it is different. So that is something that has to be taken into consideration. We would like to have a chick-chack. We would like to have a chula. I did see a chick-chack thrown there.
We will have chick-chack and chula?
I saw chick-chack.
How do you know if you don't have the black ball installed?
We only had 4 panels.
Only 4 panels.
And we were there with Douglas. We had a couple different players. Well, it'll be open to more players, but it's limited right now. And I told Douglas to pass Benny. I asked Douglas to pass Benny, and he passed him with the right side.
So it's going to be a revolution comparing with this.
That was with a 55 gram ball with tape, with the electrical tape, which is where we want to be.
I have the feeling that we're going to see a lot of changes in players'
I think
development or the level of the game because of the speed and the chick-chack and the chula.
And then also the sidewall. Because you have players who come here from the traditional jai-alai world. It's like, what do I do with this sidewall? Inaki with the sidewall. Inaki Goite with the sidewall is hilarious. Because we get the Magic City bounces. It hits one of the cracks. And Inaki's just like, what am I supposed to do with this sidewall? And he's always had bad luck with it. Nicholas has been hit 3 or 4 times. Yeche has been hit 3 or 4 times because of it.
Which is the most difficult subject when moving there? Which, the balls or...
For me?
Yeah, I mean for the whole project is... The neighborhood, perhaps. I heard that it's not the best neighborhood. Right?
The neighborhood that's something I can speak to directly, having worked there for so many years. The neighborhood that's a misconception based on history. So you can say that in the 80s, in the 70s, because of different socioeconomic activities of the general area, that it had a higher crime rate. Not specifically Miami Jai-Alai, but the neighborhood. as you've said. The neighborhood has always been industrial. It's an industrial neighborhood. So that area of 36th Street and 37th Avenue remains industrial. There's new construction immediately across the street. They built 2 high-rises, not just the one on the corner that you can see, but also down the street. So as far as looking at crime rates for that neighborhood, that neighborhood is not what people perceive it to be, but perception is a big deal. And if people perceive something to be dangerous, like Bridgeport, they used to talk about how dangerous.
That was in my mind. See?
Exactly. So, are people getting robbed in the parking lot and stuff like that? No.
We had that perception in Bridgeport, see? And when we were playing, we were from the highway to the fronton, well, a lot of police, that's true. And we always work, I hope that the car doesn't stop, just in case. Yes? And when we went on a strike, when we had to be so many hours on the picket lines, and there's a moment that you walk just in the neighborhood, and we never had any kind of trouble. It's the perception, the bias.
It's the perception.
Yeah.
It's the perception. Miami Jai-Alai has this.
Anything doesn't have anything to say with the statistics.
No.
Right?
No, because you get, in the United States here anyway, you get crime statistics based on zip code.
Yeah.
So you know exactly how many and of what type of crime takes place. And the crime statistics have always been low. And this is something that Licciardi has always talked about.
That's one of the dangers of populism that we were talking before starting the podcast. What is happening with the immigrations. They make think us that something is this way, and the statistics demonstrate that it doesn't have anything to say.
It doesn't bear it out. So it's an old building, 100 years next year, in an industrial neighborhood that many years ago had a bit more crime in the zip code. But that's not the case anymore.
Again, Stu, I think it's amazing that Jai-Alai is going back to Miami Jai-Alai after so many decades, the falling down of the industry. Tampa disappeared, Bridgeport, Milford, Daytona, West Palm Beach, I think, stands. Orlando, I don't think.
Orlando is standing?
Well, anyways, it's just kind of miracle, see, that the court is there.
It absolutely is.
It's like destiny, see?
It's what's going to happen, and I'm already prepared for this because I'm the most... other people don't pay attention to it, but I pay attention to everything that people say. So just like when we opened here, we're going to have people saying, not Jai-Alai, because, oh my God, they put a back wall on, they put a glass wall on Miami. Well, Jai-Alai hasn't been played since 2021 in Miami. Do you want to see no Jai-Alai played there? You would prefer that no Jai-Alai be played there than this? Or is that what you would prefer? And some people will say yes, and they're idiots.
And even in the Basque Country, I think it's going to break a lot of misconception or misunderstanding about, my city glass. Now we don't have glass except about walls. So we will be talking about just a shortcut fronton, like a couple of frontons that have been in the history of Jai-Alai. Madrid, in La Habana, Madrid, which was called, and Cienfuegos, I think, and Barcelona too, Canary Island too. So we always talk about Jai-Alai, but a lot of the times I've been playing short courts.
There's no question that I will say, having announced the first NAJF that I announced was 91 or 92, I believe it was, with Arta, who plays for us now. His father, Irby, who played at Palm Beach. He played with Eru, who went on to play, a long career. And so I have if nothing else, I've watched a lot of Jai-Alai. And having watched a lot of Jai-Alai, I see plays out here that amaze me, that absolutely amaze me, that require a skill that not every Jai-Alai player, not even every great Jai-Alai player has. I think, let's look no further than Arzulaika. There was an adjustment there. John has a big court game on both sides. He's got the costado. He's got the powerful right. He's got a wicked right side and a wicked serve. That doesn't always help him here. But he certainly made an adjustment. They won a championship with the Chargers. So the players, as they make an adjustment, from the traditional world. I think that's interesting. And not every player is able to make an adjustment. What we've seen with some of the young French players is that for Benetrix, who's just started this season, no adjustment period. None. It was like he's played here the entire time. Etcheberry, it took about a month and a half or whatever that was. Lalu, a surprise. Urrutia moves like Urrutia and Benetrix. They play so dangerous. They scared the hell out of me. Yeah. It's literally Benetrix caught a 2-wall right here, and he was on his ass, and he caught it, and he kept it in motion, and he flipped it back. And as he's getting up, Urrutia, bam, to the outside. I was like, and I said in the microphone, I thought you guys were friends. I mean, so it's that type of incredible, exciting play. Alex Goitia, of course. Alex is so fast and so powerful and just zip, 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 zip. And he does the same thing in Guernica. And Gaucheri. And so seeing our guys mix with these other guys is just, that's what the short court does, is when we say it's faster, we're not talking about the ball, we're talking about the play. And if you do, like, simply count. From the time that they throw it to the time that they catch it, it's about a second to a half a second faster.
And in my opinion, one of the advantages of playing in a short court is that the stopping, the holding of the ball decreases.
Yes.
Why? Because it doesn't make any sense. If you are playing in Guernica 57 meters long, keep in mind, then if you're not strong enough, you have to hold the ball, stop the ball, and then try to throw hard. Here, 2 steps with the ball inside of the basket doesn't help that much.
No.
So I think it's going to be cleaning the game, or I don't know how you have to say it, but it's one of the advantages.
I think so.
Going back to the new court in Miami, 100 years, it's going to be, I guess there will be celebrations or some kind of honoring. And I have the perception too that, I don't know, because I'm not in contact with people in South Florida, but they don't know that the Jai-Alai mark is for 100 years. And if you start looking in the area, you hardly will find anything related to 100 years ago. It's amazing.
No,
I know that most part of it is probably lost in the memory.
South Florida is particularly bad, having grown up here. They don't do a great job at history because it's always more important to knock it down for its property value.
No.
That's something that is just, and there's not a lot of things down here that were allowed to turn 100. I mean, Coral Gables, which is the city that just turned 100, the Biltmore Hotel, that'll be 100 next year. A lot of things happen. The 1926 hurricane, which we know literally changed the landscape and the financial landscape of South Florida, closed the Hialeah fronton, and what's its name? Miami Jai-Alai was built in 26. The building wasn't finished, but the structure did survive the hurricane, and it has survived every hurricane since. That building is indestructible. But no, you're absolutely right. As far as like a respect or an understanding of something turning 100, it's not very common in South Florida. So it's hard to even tell people down here, hey, this is turning 100. They go, wow, that's interesting. And
but perhaps a lot of the new people that came here from every part of the world, they don't care much about it, right?
We hope they're more interested.
They are not interested in Wilbut, which is the art district, Wilbut.
Which one?
Winwood.
Oh.
This district that it's remodeling.
Oh, Wynwood.
Winwood, yeah.
Wynwood, sorry, that wasn't your accent. That was me not just putting 2 and 2 together. Yeah, no, they'd rather see graffiti on the side of a building or art Basel with art that no one can afford. Yeah.
Or in Messi, they're more interested in Messi, the soccer player.
Absolutely.
Stu, you always said your focus is on the players,
100.
Not the numbers.
Yes.
Is that still true?
Yes. Scott has made it very easy for me not to focus on the numbers. Dan, and now that I'm dealing with Dan again, has reminded Dan Licciardi has reminded me of what my responsibilities are. He reminds me that my responsibilities are to Scott, and Scott reminds me exactly There was a phone call that's on tape now, but Scott lays out very clearly what he wants from me, and the players remain my primary focus. And that's a bit tricky because in being an effective manager, you're not always going to be liked. And I think if nothing else, I believe that every player on our roster knows that what I'm saying is not bullshit. I think that they know that.
Since the first moment, you seem to me a very sensitive person, but with the pass of the time and managing players from different backgrounds, origins, it doesn't, the skin get thicker, you know what I mean? There's a moment that you stop losing that feeling of treating people like persons and not numbers, and there's a moment that, to the hell.
No, that's never changed for me. In fact, I'm more sensitive to it now because it's less industrial than it used to be. You see, before, we knew that players would be coming from Spain or France or schools, and either they were related to someone or it was, there was a special handshake with different frontons or all these other things that I had no part of. So there was more of a distance between myself and the players. No. Now, that's not the case. Now, every player that's come to this roster, I won't say every player, but almost every player on this roster had dinner with me or sat with me somewhere before their name ever came up to Scott. Or I may have told him, I'm going to go talk with so-and-so.
Are you still available 24 hours a day?
Yes.
For any player's phone call?
100%.
Yeah?
100%. Some players take advantage of that. Players know that sometimes that I send messages at 4 o'clock in the morning because my sleeping is still off. They'll get this long message. We had a question about holding. We had a question about holding or juggling. Or I forget. I had to explain. I forgot what it was in the judges, and it's probably the longest message that I've ever written on it. I think it was. I forget what it was, but it was something that came out. And one of the players wrote, "Oh, good, only 20 minutes until we get Stu's message."
Are there some calls that you see who is calling and say, "Oh my God," you don't even respond?
Not for a highlight player. No. There's not a highlight player whose call I won't take, and that's something that's consistent with Scott. Scott will take a call from virtually anybody, and especially me. I mean, he's been in the middle of meetings, and he said, "I'm in a meeting. I only have a second. What's up?" And I let him know if it's important or not. But because, like right now, what's the most important thing? I kind of dodged that question a little bit, not intentionally, but the ball is the focus right now of going over there. Everything else is just going to happen. But the most important thing in a program is players. It really is. And then one player can come in and screw everything up. I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen it. And
that's why you didn't offer a job to a certain player or
so. I think the best way to explain it is, and not referring to, well, no. Let's, you did a wonderful interview. And I was very happy that the player was able to express what he really thought. And there was no question in my mind that everything he said, he sincerely believed. The only thing that I believe that it was lacking, but I think he and I texted.
Can we
after
say
this.
his name is too?
Of course, Eric.
Yeah, Eric.
Of course, Eric.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that he was missing, and this is sincere, is the other person's perspective. Because he did talk about a few things. Like, for instance, since it's come out, let's address one thing. His greatest regret in life is that he didn't talk to Scott. The implication of that is that because he went through me, he didn't get a contract here. One, if that's your biggest regret in life, all of life, not just this. If that's your biggest regret in life, expand your view. And two, I sincerely don't believe, and I hope one day he can, see his role in what's happened where he's concerned. Because if it was just with me, or that incident that happened between us, which can be forgiven without an issue. And he and I, literally, I believe our last text was, we don't have a problem with each other. We really don't. We have seen in this program, and certainly in other programs, but here, where a particular personality is incendiary. And if they're pissed off, or if they have a problem on the court, it spreads like a poison, and it can spread like a poison in attitude. And then that screws up the locker room. And that's the most important thing for me. That is the most important thing for me. So I'm not saying that Eric would be poisonous to the locker room. I wouldn't go as far as to say that. I would say that some of the frustrations that he's explained, he's had at other places, he's definitely going to have in this program. And it's better off that we don't go down that path. That's it.
What part is the toughest when dealing with players?
Historically or here?
When they ask for a salary, when they have some complaint?
So by history, the salary, which was flexible, and realistically, I don't think what players understood was if they got, by history, not here. So when the envelopes came, and it said if you got a $200 raise or $100 raise or $200 cut or whatever, that it was a budget. And no more money was being spent on players. If it was taken from this one, it was given to this
one.
Some
exceptions, because the other day I interviewed Felix, and he was telling us when he played in Dania for 3 seasons, he had his salary, a good one, but he had a bonus that wasn't reflected in the contract. See, like
yes.
How to say, pocket money or
side
whatever.
agreement.
An agreement.
A side agreement.
A side agreement. Besides the contract, no papers, just by oral.
So I will let's. Okay, so we're bringing.
Could it happen that in my city?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
When Lopez came, there was talk in the locker room. Of course, talk in the back of the locker room, not in front of me, that we were giving Lopez some not obscene, but a big housing allowance or something like that. Scott Savin doesn't believe that any Jai-Alai player in the world, regardless of skill, is too far out of the realm of his budget. He wouldn't allow me to do something like that. So the number that they passed around the locker room was off. Now, what we did understand was that players, where like a hitch in our program is, if you will, is that since we started with players who live here and players who were trained here, and then Basque American players, for instance, since they were living here or playing at Dania, I think the complaint or concern is that when we have players who come seasonally, that there's a housing allowance or some type of accommodation for that, or airfare, or those things. We now see that as the cost of doing business, and the people who were here before were in the old system. So the program would become financially untenable if all of a sudden we're saying, okay, we're going to be completely even, and if we're going to give someone $1,000 a month during the months they play, not during the months that they don't play, we're going to give someone $1,000 a month for housing or whatever the number is. Let's say it's $1,000 a month, that we now have to give every player on the roster $1,000 a month. The program becomes financially untenable. Now, the argument that the players make, which might be a reasonable argument, was take it out of the prize money. There's two views on that. Some players don't want it out of the prize money. So where does it become fair? So it's as fair as we can make it. And realistically, there's no secret meetings or, we really need to do this for this one or this for that one. And I will say that when a player has come to us because there's an issue, with family, or there's an issue with this or with that, and this has always been the case, giving players advances back in the Florida gaming days, guys who would get off the plane with no money, and of course we help, and more so here than ever. Medical bills for families. It's so that part of it, I would say, is complicated, but players make it out to be more difficult than it is. And what it all needs is empathy. It just needs empathy. I can't ask certain players to come here for that $600 a week and the prize money, and they don't make any money in a week. How do they pay rent? And they're only here for a few months.
Yeah. You have also problem with getting a visa for some of the players, right?
So we have invited some players to play for a tournament for prize money only. And that has worked for a few seasons. And now we would like to employ them. And if we want to employ them and we want to pay them a salary and not just prize money, then that has to be done by visa. Mm-hmm. And we currently are in the process of going for visas for a certain number of players who need it, because we feel that that's in the best interest of the program. And what's very interesting about that is that most of the players we're looking at are in the finals.
Yeah.
So it's because that's one of the things that the criteria is that they be amongst the best players. Fortunately, they are.
A couple of days ago, I was talking with one of these players that is going to play tomorrow the final.
The nervous one?
And I asked him, are you nervous? He said, yeah, I'm nervous. But
if you made me say,
I'm talking about my friend Unda.
I was going to say, if you made me say Eric's name, which I really have, and I really do wish he and family the best.
Yeah, I'm so nervous, and I say, come. Why?
Relax.
Because you play, you should be happy. No, because my destiny is on the stake. See, I'm waiting this week if immigration allows me to be able to be employed by this company or not, or I'll have to go back to Guernica and probably never come back anymore. And I say, oh my God, when someone wants so much to play, when you see someone so happy with what he's doing, and say, my God, I hope he gets the best of it.
No, that's what we're hopeful for. We've made the petition, and these are the best players, and their certifications from overseas are excellent, and that's that's what we want. That's what we want. We need this to be the best, so we're looking for the best. So visas were that
throughout
process.
these years, do you have any episode, incident with the players, funny one or something that comes to your mind, or something that players taught you, you learn from them?
Many. Are you just Magic City, or are you talking before?
Magic City, yeah, because your career is so long that we could make another podcast. Yes, with World Highlight.
I'll tell you one with one of my favorites.
Besides Elizegi,
with Elizegi I'm very proud of what happened with Elizegi, because we were able to arrange the first highlight trade that I think ever took place. Was that he wasn't happy at Miami, and it was in his best interest to be elsewhere. And so during mid-season, which almost never happens, he was able to go to Orlando to finish out the year, and we got Ricky, I think we got, at Miami. So there was a highlight trade, and we paid his boleto at Miami, which was more than was making. So that was an interesting one. So that one I think worked out well. And again, I have tremendous respect for Adolfo as a player and as an individual. And for the record, I have tremendous respect for Eric. I have tremendous respect for Eric. Again, we just think differently. We just think differently.
Is there any chance that he could play Miami?
I don't believe that it's in anyone's best interest. Okay. And I will say this. No, is the door closed forever? No, because, for instance, if this thing takes off, and we're talking about the next 10 years, I know he's more, he's a little older than that. Yeah. No, is the door permanently closed? No, it's not. But over the next 2 years, I can't see it happening. The program's still fragile.
I understand that you're very interested in psychology. It's a field that you really like.
I worked in it for a number of years.
Okay.
And that you studied psychology. This was our first conversation.
Is this a laboratory for you, where you learn more than in college?
Yes. I have approached highlight players from a management position with more concern for their psychological well-being, and I have never understood. There's a big question that we won't answer, and that question is, does Jai-Alai attract a certain type of crazy player, or does it create a certain type of crazy player? We still ask this question at Magic City. Mm-hmm. And I include myself in that.
Yeah.
Because, you want to talk about a funny episode? I was announcing. I made, Scott likes that the announcing to be a little bit more, interactive, let's say. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that he likes. And a player did something crazy, and I said something sarcastic. And the player turned around and told me to shut the F up. And I lost my temper.
Yeah.
Very bad. Very, very badly. I regret it in retrospect. And I just got up from the announcer's chair and just started screaming like a crazy person right past JR, who looked down, and the players who basically, because I don't think anybody had seen me like that. I hadn't seen myself like that in years. And I was just screaming. He came off the court. But the beautiful thing, I sat back down shaking, and he just looked at me, and I looked at him, sitting in the corner. He did the heart thing for me. And as soon as the game was over, we hugged. I said, no matter what you do, you should never have to listen to that. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Just understand that I'm as crazy as any player that's out there. So that's one funny episode. But let me tell you about one other episode that made me very proud. A player who has occasionally done things that he shouldn't, that I've talked to, and who's a friend, told a new player who came to the program, who may be doing similar things, may not. He pointed at him and he said, always tell him the truth, the complete truth. Don't try to hide it. Tell him the truth. Because if you're honest with him, that's an honor. That's an honor to be a manager that people want to be honest with. That's an honor. That was one of the nicest things that a player ever said.
I think it was 3 years ago, in the day of the draft, Scott Sabin introduced you as the voice of Jai-Alai. Nowadays, what does it mean for you? It's kind of an asset and a symbol of authority, or how do you feel? The Frank Sinatra of Jai-Alai?
No. There have been many. I would say that what's different with me and other Jai-Alai announcers is that I have a greater degree of freedom to have a more like radio show conversational approach. That hasn't been allowed in Jai-Alai, because what are you going to do in the auditorium? You're not having a back and forth with the audience. So I have that freedom, so it's not a fair comparison. As far as voice, no, I think that Dave Lemon is a better announcer. I think that historically Dave Lamont was a better announcer. I think that one of the best announcers that ever, Tony, and I'm blanking on his last name, at Orlando, what a voice and just what a command of the court he had. No, there have been throughout history, Jack Patterson at Tampa, there have been great Jai-Alai voices. Tom Contreras, rest in peace. Yeah. I mean, there have been great announcers. I am just one of the moment, let's say. And because Jai-Alai is getting a lot of attention, it's up a lot of places. So I'm currently the voice of Jai-Alai.
I can avoid it, and I think I told you before, every time I watch the games overseas and I listen to both of you, Andrew and you, I say, my God, they're terrific. They're wonderful announcers.
Thank you.
Because you don't stop talking, no? You always have something to say. And also, in this kind of court, as you said before, you don't have too much room to make the point. It's not like watching a game in a long court, Guernica, San Juan de Luz, wherever, 54 meters, a lot of space, tactic, strategies, the balls are different, the communication. Here, everything is simplified. Mm-hmm. And when you get the best out of it, I say, oh my God, I won't be able to say a single word saying, because what can I say? The the front court is attacking the back court, but too much space, or like 4 or 5 minutes of lasting the point. What can I say? I mean, these guys deserve a lot of credit.
Andrew makes it easy for me because Scott wanted a particular type of announcing, and I didn't understand. I've told the story many times. I didn't understand for 2 years what Scott wanted. And then Andrew came, and Andrew and I were going into a meeting with Scott, and Scott had written a 3-page script to tell us exactly what we needed to say and how we needed to do it. And I'd gotten wind of this. And I said, "Oh, Andrew, we need to." So Andrew and I met before. I don't think Scott knows this story. He will if he watches. And I said, "Andrew, I need you to come in a half hour early." So he came in early. I said, "If we don't go in with a game plan, we're going to wind up, hi, Andrew, how are you today? Oh, I'm fine. Something happened on the. Don't get me wrong. Scott's entertaining, but it's like I can't announce by a script. I can't talk by a script. I can't memorize anything. So Andrew and I worked out very early on that he was very good at stats and numbers, and also he would get better at the highlight part, whereas let me talk about the highlight. We worked that out very early. Andrew is a quick learner, and he is just a fantastic person.
He doesn't have too much background with Jai-Alai, right?
This is his entire background.
It's unbelievable.
This is his entire. He attended a few highlight games, as did his family.
Another question is, you have to manage players, and at the same time you're announcing. Is that comparable? Do you feel a sense of favoritism with some of the players? I do. When I'm watching games, I don't know why, maybe something psychological that I can explain, but you always go for someone. I don't know why the reason. Tomorrow I'll be watching the final, and my heart or whatever, for I don't know what reason, is going to be for a certain team. No? And I don't have any interest in one of the others.
I can say honestly that is okay. So let's talk about. Okay, so there's a couple questions there.
Yeah.
First of all, managing versus announcing. Lindsay Savin, she's the executive producer. She deserves her own title, but she is also Scott's daughter, is in charge of production. So she is theoretically my boss while I'm announcing. She wants me to completely detach from my management responsibilities while I'm announcing. Sometimes that's not possible because something happens or something. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just not possible. And she's understanding. For the most part, she's understanding, but she'd like me to be further away and focus because she's focused on the presentation. And even when I talk, it's like, don't bring up so much about management of the players because announcers don't manage. So I have to get that straight in my head. But by the same token, my management responsibilities are what's more important? Well, to the broadcast, it's that. So there's a bit of a conflict there. As far as favoritism, this has always been something in Jai-Alai. There are just naturally personalities who you're more comfortable with, and especially, I mean, having grown up around Jai-Alai, where Basque players are concerned, they used to intimidate me when I was young. I mean, I was so intimidated because, and as we've discussed, once I began to understand the culture better, and understand the background better, I understood that it didn't come from a place of what I thought when I was young, and I mean young, 10, 11 years old, arrogant. It didn't come from a place of arrogance. It came from a place of protection. We stay together because we've always gotten screwed, and we need to protect everything, our sport, our heritage, how I understand that. So I would say that I felt that there was a natural distance between myself and a majority of European players based on the language and based on the culture. And I was never, and in many cases, it's their sport.
Is that a deal when you have to deal with Mexican, Philippine, Basque from the south part, Basque from the north part? Are there different types?
100%.
100%.
100%. There have been times where I've said, pissed off in Fort Pierce or something like that, give me a roster full of Filipinos and Mexicans. Please do that. And of course I didn't mean it was an angry moment at the time. It's so, as I've gotten older now though, it's like Inaki and Olats. Inaki Goitian a lot. I miss being around Inaki. I hadn't spent much time with him, so I asked him to go out to dinner. The other Inaki will make me laugh back here, he's just one of the most entertaining people. He's just got such a natural sense of humor, and he's such a bright personality to be around. So as I've gotten older, it has my relationship has evolved. People naturally assume that I have favoritism where Douglas is concerned, even in some of the original Magic City guys. And favoritism, no. Have I spent social time with some player? Yes, I've spent more social time, but also they invited me. They invited me. Anderluck invited me. Douglas has invited me. Inaki has invited me. It's more based on that. And I've been more open to going where that's concerned. If Goshari invited me, I would go. I don't know what we talk about. No, I'm just kidding. I love Kites. He's a
and
great
also
player.
You got your own particular vocabulary. See, when I hear low runner, I never heard it before, and I love it. Low runner, bajonazo.
So,
or Magic City
drop shot.
Drop shot, or when the ball hits in a particular place and goes crazy. That's
Magic City bounce.
Magic City bounce.
Okay.
Or a filo too.
Yeah.
Never heard of it.
Okay.
A filo.
So Ara gave us filo, the edge of the knife.
Yeah.
Ara gave us filo.
Right.
Ara gave us that. Scott, in the very beginning, going back to 2018, he felt that one of the things that separated the American viewer from the sport were some of the terms. So he wanted to Americanize as much of the terminology as possible. So Dejada, even though the team was Dejada Devils, so he was accepting of that. He wasn't against the language. It was the barrier that potentially created with new young viewers. And so he wanted drop shot. For instance, reverse. We always talk about reverse. I can understand where that would be confusing to an American audience. Throwing the reverse. He's got a good backhand. Well, okay, so I call it a backhand. Now I call it a backhand constantly. Low runner, remate rincon. We can say that, but there were even certain highlight people when I said remate rincon, which I got from my teacher in highlight. He gave me that. When I was 15 or 16, I said it on the broadcast, and they went, "What the hell is that?" It's like even some of the players were like, "What the inside kill shot?" I'm like, oh, okay. So in that regard, yes, we from the beginning in the broadcast, we did want to make it more friendly to an American audience where they would understand.
Overseas, Basque television is doing a good job in adapting this vocabulary to the Basque language. Otherwise, it sounds like too much Spanish, too Spanish. Well, chula and chic-chac, they're maintained because they're more onomatopoeic, right? Chic-chac. But cortada, they don't say en euskera cortada bat botadu, moztu egin du, which is more natural, see? Or bote corrido, I think that's appropriate. I think because especially in our case that the Basque language is not so powerful as far as sociological presence, you have to maintain. So I understand that the terminology must be adapted to, in this case, to English.
To a specific culture, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with cultural appropriation. It really doesn't. It's how to make it more popular.
You transmit passion. How do you do it after so many years in the decadence of traditional Jai-Alai? Now in this project, shaky, maybe, I don't know if it's shaky, but and still you're full of passion. How you?
I love Jai-Alai.
Yeah.
I always have.
Will you be one of these persons that even when you retire, probably someday, I don't know, you'll continue watching the games? And
that's a tough question because when I did retire from Jai-Alai and went on to other things in 2013, it happened. I did not go near a fronton and I didn't watch.
Well, but because the end of that period wasn't too nice, right? Probably you were.
It was one of the unhappy endings.
The happy ending.
It was one of the unhappy endings. That had something to do with it, but it always surprised me, like how certain players, for instance, they leave the game They don't go back to the fronton. They don't pick up a cesta ever. I never understood that. Now I do understand that. This sport has, and maybe it's true for all sports, I don't know. There's a certain emotional component, and I think that that's why, like you said, my background in psychology, my own psychological issues, which I'm very honest about the broadcasts and everywhere else. It's like, and amongst the players, it's like, if you want to know if I took my meds today, someone asked me a question I don't like, So I'm very honest about these things. It doesn't, it's a non-issue for me, but it's not always an easy subject for other people. But there is something about this sport that engenders passion, you ask. So it gets back to your other question as well. When I'm watching Jai-Alai, I never bet on Jai-Alai pari-mutually ever. I'm not a gambler, to speak of. Slot machine, nothing. I mean, I just don't bet. And what was fortunate about that is when I watched Jai-Alai at Miami, primarily when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then as an announcer, I could enjoy every point because I didn't need the 2 to beat the 3 to beat the 7 to beat I didn't care about that. For this one to come back around, I could enjoy every point. That's still the case now. That's always been the case. So every point that's played, I'm invested in. And that's genuine. I can focus my attention on what I'm seeing. I can look at old partidos. The Michelena Pedruso against Bolivar and Felix, even though I know Bolivar was towards the end, 94, 95, I believe it was. I've discussed it with a couple of the young French players who weren't even alive at the time. Mm-hmm. But that partido in Biarritz was just magnificent.
Well, the one that Michelena and Pedroso won, you mean?
Yes.
I asked Felix the other day about that.
Did
partido.
you?
Yes.
Really?
And he told me the game never been took place because it rained so much. The surface was completely wet.
Okay.
So the main wall, and they use this kind of serring, what we call it, to clean the court, but still you couldn't stand, you couldn't throw the ball using your legs.
Wow.
Felix said, never took place. It should never take place, the game. He said they play better, they adjusted better to the partido, but the conditions were not idoneous for playing Jai-Alai in a fair way.
I never.
He recognized that
Sure.
Michelena was playing great, Pedroso, but the way he used to play based on his leg, because
Felix would plant
when you use your right hand,
of course, and just
the
go over
way
the top.
you need your legs attached to the floor, and he couldn't do. And Bolivar was maybe a little bit over the hill, and when the floor is wet, you don't move.
He can't move left to right. Yeah, sure.
Just
No, it was very so.
like an episode of the game, right?
I can be passionate about. So it's legitimate. There's no false passion there. It's that I really, really enjoy. Including, it's like, well, then how? If you're passionate about the sport, what did you guys do to it in 2018? How could you be passionate about Nate the Great and El Barba? I'll tell you, JR and I think, have this in common. We trained them from nothing. He and I, together, we trained them from nothing. So when they got the serve in, it was exciting. When they made a rebote, it was exciting. And I know that guys were playing at Dania going, oh my God, that guy got $125 and all he did was serve it 4 times and the other guy dropped the ball and whatever, and I'm playing for 80 or whatever it was at the time. How does that happen? Well, that's just Jai-Alai. It's, it was legitimate excitement over those players, and it still is. I like when, El Barba had to come out and substitute the other day. He was asleep on the couch. Just kidding. He was on his couch. But he had to come out. That excited me.
Stu, if you had to explain Jai-Alai to an 18 years old who's never seen the game, what would you say? Picture it.
Explain the sport or the history?
The sport, Jai-Alai, what is this all about? El Barba playing.
I've explained it so many times on, when I was involved with public relations at Miami, they come with the camera from whatever, you got 5 minutes to prepare. And it's like, explain the game. So you say it's the world's fastest ball game, and you catch the ball. You have to catch it and throw it in a wicker basket, and it's exciting. It's like if I had to explain it, Jai-Alai this is one thing I have noticed. People either really get into it, or they go and they say, that was nice, where are we going for dinner? It's one of two approaches. There's really no one that's lukewarm about Jai-Alai. That's been my experience. So as far as explaining it, transmitting my enthusiasm for it is so difficult to master it. Truly difficult. There's so much that goes into mastering it. That's why if we talk about a player, we talk about Ara or Mitch. For Ara, I believed it was natural. For Mitch, it was more mechanical because he had to work. Whereas for Ara, it was genuine. It was just natural. He was naturally, and still is, even with 2 bad knees. He right now could go into the draft as a 4. And I'm not even good where the draft is concerned in those numbers. But I've seen him tear guys up out here. Literally tear guys up out here with that right side. Still.
I interview a guy named Carmelo Espeleta, who is the chief of the motorcycle worldwide. See, he's the boss. And he used to play amateur. He played Miami Jai-Alai tournament.
Okay.
And he was telling that someone can drive a car 200 miles an hour and you don't feel anything. But you put that guy against the left wall while the point is in play, and he's going to get the hell out of this in panic. He's going to go in panic, and he can drive one formula or a motorcycle at 200 miles, and nothing happens. But
100%.
Yeah.
I have worked in emergency rooms with psychotic patients, hearing voices totally out of touch with reality, who needed to be restrained. And I was part of the restraint team as medications were being administered. I would sometimes rather have that interaction than have a difficult conversation with a Jai-Alai player. Especially a player we don't have this conversation. I haven't had to have it. But a player who's at the end of his career when he doesn't think that he's at the end of his career.
What do you dream may happen to Jai-Alai in the next few years? Let's start in a fantasy way, if you want.
It's really not my fantasy. It's Scott's vision. I hope Scott's vision comes true.
Which is
that, well, now there's another element to it, which has always been more people will watch, more people will back the teams, more people will come when we have the event, and now that's going to be more true over at Miami, in that, it's going to be an entertainment center, because entertainment is going to be part of it. That's part of the relationship between the two organizations. Is Scott has a wonderful history with bringing entertainment to parimutuel facilities, concerts that he had here, concerts that he had at Gulfstream, and now that'll hopefully be the same thing. Not hopefully, that will be the same thing at Miami. That'll be a part of it. So Jai-Alai will be incorporated into that. So I hope that Scott's vision, my dream is that Scott's vision, not my vision, because I'm a good manager. I'm an effective manager because I get the plan and I execute. That I'm good at. Visionary, I'm not particularly good at. I'm not good at seeing things, especially other people's ideas. It's like it takes me a while to learn it. I'm much better at history. So I'm hopeful that Scott's vision and Lindsay's vision, and Dan is very clear on the vision, that their vision for Jai-Alai, which is that it break even financially, that people watch, and that it brings in enough money so that players, Jai-Alai players, this is really his vision. It's not for his success. And he's told the players this. It's so that Jai-Alai players can get the respect that the sport deserves, and they can get the financial compensation that it deserves. And I don't have to tell you that amongst highlight players, they're pretty cynical about that. Oh yeah, sure, that's what he wants. It's very easy to say that, but no, that's really what he wants. That's really what he wants. Now, whether they get in salary or prize money, that's a debate that he and I have gone back and forth. I said, what are you going to have, a $10,000 game? You know, if this thing has got money coming into it, you're going to have $10,000. That's another thing that we haven't figured out. You know, what is a highlight match worth? You know, what is the value of that compared to comparative costs and training and whatever? So these are things that I hope that we have to deal with in the future. And he's been very clear that every profitable dollar goes to the players. Now, not in a handout.
What legacy would you like to leave in that story, in this story? You're 56. I have the feeling that you're going to be like Pedro Mir, that will be forever and almost forever.
My legacy? That's a tricky one. That's a very tricky question. I didn't think I would spend my life doing this. And I certainly didn't think after 2013 that I would be doing it in any way. I wasn't, just like I wasn't prepared for it in 1991 when I was 22 years old, I wasn't prepared for it at 48. It was a happy accident, I'll say. And this Miami Jai-Alai thing, a happy accident. I told certain players, I said, you're going to hear me with a nervous laugh at times. And you know what it is? It's very funny. It's the laugh. And Benny Collette, may he rest in peace, because that man really believed in Jai-Alai and loved Jai-Alai. He loved Jai-Alai and he loved Jai-Alai players. He loved Alizagi. He wanted Alizagi at Miami Jai-Alai so badly with Goico. And he just, and when he was losing money and he was just like, nope, if I'm going to lose money on Jai-Alai, I'm going to lose it with the best players and watch the best Jai-Alai. God bless him. Benny Collette was just fantastic for that. Scott has a very similar vision to that, just a much, much different approach. So I follow them. You know, I follow them. I've been given an opportunity to work in Jai-Alai. I'm more focused on an individual legacy, not so much in Jai-Alai, but amongst the individual players. I would like the greatest number of players, even some who I've terminated over the years, even Eric, sincerely, to say, if nothing else, he treated me with respect. He treated me honestly. He spoke the truth. I think that a number of highlight players who were there when I was explaining how bad things were in Florida gaming, I think that they now have said, wow, he really was telling the truth. They were really telling the truth. We were really telling the truth. So that he dealt with us honestly. He respected the sport, because everybody knows I love the sport. Everybody knows that I love the special nuances of the sport. They do know that. So a comparison to Pedro Mir in that regard, yes, I love court positioning. I love the fact, I made the observation the other day, and it pertains to Friday night. Let's talk about Friday night. How the more mature players on the Cyclones, what I have noticed is that what maturity brings to them is conservation of movement. And as I've looked out amongst Jai-Alai in general, I believe that that's the case, that the more mature Jai-Alai players, that the players who play beyond 30, towards 40, that their court, like Oratio is the best example. I don't know that I ever saw him throw a fall down Robota. He was always in position, always in position. Chiruka said about Orbea. Orbea was like God. No matter where you threw the ball, he was already standing there. So court positioning is so key, and that as you mature in Jai-Alai as a player, that conservation of movement, so that you can conserve, so you're not expending so much energy, not because you're older, because you know where to be and you know where to throw the ball and you have the skill to throw the ball. Whereas the younger players are like this, and it's exciting. Alex, Urrutia, these guys, it's like it's very exciting, but also a little tiring and a little dangerous at times. So that comparison to Pedro Mir about me knowing the nuances of Jai-Alai, like a Berenson maybe, they understood the detail of the play, and I believe I do too. I knew when I was very young, as I told you in one of our face-to-face meetings, I knew that I played in the Jai-Alai school and I had good form, and I knew that I would never play professional Jai-Alai. I knew that I would never play professional Jai-Alai, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. And then for years, I got calls from players who believed that they could play professional. I had to tell them they couldn't play professional. They didn't get it. It's like, you just don't get it. So as far as the legacy, it's more personal. I would just like people to look back on a funny interaction or some way that I made them laugh or some way that I had taken care of a problem or some opportunity that I made available to them or some honest conversation that I had with them, even if they're not happy. There's one player on the roster, for instance, who remained nameless, who is of a Jai-Alai family, a few generations, who never wanted to be a Jai-Alai player. He's here. He's been here for a few years. And we occasionally talk. And are you okay? This isn't what you wanted to do. This isn't what I wanted to do. But it's been a wonderful life. You know, it really has been. All ups? No, but that's like, life isn't all up. You know, it really isn't. So the legacy that I would like to have is personal. I would like people to speak, not to speak. I don't care what they say or what they write. What they write. I don't. It's what they think. I would like them to have at least a warm feeling where I'm concerned, because that is sincerely where I've come from.
Stu, it's been an honor to have you here in Chick Chack, in your house.
The last interview that's going to take place on this court?
How about if we make an appointment in 3 years? So
3 years.
Yeah.
I think I spoke earlier about 2 years, but I would love, I'll tell you what, in 3 years, absolutely. I would love to speak to you again in 3 years. We can even do it next year if you want. In
the middle of Miami Jai-Alai, in the middle of the court.
We can have it in the middle of the Miami Jai-Alai court.
Thank you so much, Stu.
It's an honor.
It's been a pleasure.
It's an honor to be associated with the sport. It's been an honor talking with you. One thing I do want to say is that when I did have to write something very sensitive, I could have spoken to anybody in Jai-Alai. I sought you out specifically because in these interviews and in your blogs, you have a sensitivity to all of the nuances in all of the sides that is unique. You've been very helpful in that regard. And also, what I like best about it, you came full circle because you weren't a fan of this theory in the beginning, but you came full circle. That speaks to an open-mindedness that I think is great. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you so much.